Check one, two, three. Hey everybody, it's Michael Helms, also known as Michael the Sound Guy, and this is the Location Sound Podcast. You know, each episode we talk with location sound mixers, boom ops, and other industry pros about the various aspects of recording sound on location, whether it's for feature and independent films, TV commercials, interviews, anytime where dialogue from actors is recorded. I started my career in the recording studios in New York City with some of the big artists back in the day, and later on projects for networks like HBO, Sci-Fi Channel, and the Cartoon Network. As time went by, I got out of the studio and began working in production sound. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, thanks for joining us. Okay, the Location Sound Podcast is back today with a production sound mixer and boom op based out of Orlando, Florida. Here we go with Alan Harris.
How you doing today, Michael?
Hey, Alan. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, of course.
So, Alan, we met briefly when you were on an audio panel at the Florida Film Festival, and the topic was eavesdropping on echoes, exploring the art of sound for film. So can you give us a light recap of your philosophy of recording sound on set?
Well, I really like that title of that specific panel because especially when you're dealing with a lot of indie, fast-paced shooting, eavesdropping is how you get a lot of your information. There's a lot of other people, trying to get in and get that information, and your job, I feel, is to try to be as least of a bother as you can be. Because for whatever reason, as you know, sound department gets the least amount of grace in that regard. If you come up and bother someone, everyone loves to joke, oh, waiting on sound, oh, waiting on this. But of course, other departments get a little bit more leniency. So the entire panel was mainly focusing on a lot of the aspects with post-production. I know two of our panelists work at Full Sail Dub Stage, so they do a lot of post-audio, sound effects recordings, even some Foley artist. So I was on the panel to just kind of bring in a little bit of the before we get to that stage, just talking about how to give the best results we can, because of course, those people doing post are amazing. They are amazing at what they do. But if you only give them something that's just say 50 out of 100, they're only going to be able to make it, maybe up to 70, 80%. Where if you can go and give them a really solid foundation, they're going to be able to make it almost perfect. So that's mainly what the whole panel was about.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of giving post the best product possible. And we talk about this on the podcast sometimes that, every sound mixer should have to do post on the audio that they recorded, and it will make you better. It will, keep you honest, and you'll work harder, hopefully, by hearing what you could have done better and those type of things. But yeah, I'm all about, I don't want to hear any complaints from post saying this is a mess,
I love getting the compliment from my producers, directors, but my most solid compliments I ever get is from some sort of editor or post-audio guy that comes in and says, hey, you made my job the easiest I've had all month. And that's just like, you know what? That's how I know I'm doing the best job I possibly can, because those people aren't going to go out of their way to tell you that unless it's actually true.
Exactly. Whether it's a scratchy lav that needs to be replaced by the boom and plant mics and whatever, I think it's so important to capture that moment as best as possible.
Yeah, whenever we're dealing with on set, I'm always going to love my plant mics and boom microphones. That's always going to be hey, this is going to be the best sounding microphone. Of course, a lav is going to be consistent, but it's not going to be the best. Of course, it's a little tiny microphone buried inside of clothing, so that's exactly what it's going to sound like, even in the best of days. But like you said, sometimes that's just not going to be the option depending on the location and the reverb. Especially with a lot of corporate stuff, people ask me, is it really necessary to put up a boom and have them wear a microphone? My answer is always, listen, the answer is probably no, but why would I not set both up and give them the option? Why would I not give them everything they can? It's really easy to just not use that file versus going and having to think about reshooting it. Like, that should never be the option.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you mentioned Full Sail University. They are a primary sponsor of the Florida Film Festival, and you are currently on staff at Full Sail. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I am on staff as a faculty member. It is titled a lab specialist for the online digital cinematography program.
Can you kind of give us an overview of your role?
Yeah, so my primary classes as of now, I'm teaching Intro to Post, which is about, I'd say 7 months, 8 months into the about 22-month program. And then the class directly after that, which is Project and Portfolio 1, which is kind of like a recap. We go and we take the last 5-6 months of classes you've been a part of and kind of just put like a finishing cap. Hey, here's a big project that kind of collaborates and uses all the skills you just learned. So then you can move on to the more advanced parts of the degree program. And then, like I said, every like 4 to 5 months, you have another project and portfolio that you do the same type of stuff with. So general answering questions to students, being there to do live Zoom sessions if they have any questions on either programs or policies. So kind of just general Q&A type stuff. And then doing some grading on assignments, just depending on it's the course director is the owner of each class. So just helping them out as much as possible, being support for them.
What are some things that you try to help students understand about getting started in the film and television industry?
I try to let them know that no one's journey is quote unquote the right way. Everyone has a different way to either break into it or start it. It doesn't matter if it's your first time ever dealing with this type of work and you're trying to, start from fresh, or maybe you already have some contacts in this industry, which is going to make things a lot easier. But it doesn't matter if you're entering it from what position, from where in the country. There is no, like I said, right way to do it. So as long as you have the passion, and also, of course, luck is always going to be a huge part in it. Just sticking with it. And again, if you get the luck, if you get the passion, that's where opportunity arises. And just kind of, if you try to make it happen, it's usually going to work out. That's not always the case. Sometimes it takes longer than it sadly should, but just keep going and trying to find like-minded people. If you're lucky enough, finding that core crew of maybe like 2 or 3 different crews that you work with, that's where, you're starting to make things happen. And it might take a while. It might take 2-4 years to actually start building that foundation up.
Definitely. Yeah. Where you start is not where you end up. A lot of people, they don't want to take the first job as a PA, or I think my first job, I was working in the tape library at the post group at the Disney MGM studios back in the day. And they had a whole post-production facility in the back. And I started off and I was in the tape library, but then they would pull us out and we would be like post-production assistants for like the big holiday Christmas shows that they do. But that's where you start. And it's not always glamorous. And sometimes you feel like it may be beneath you. Mm-hmm. But sometimes just stepping up and doing the best job you can in that position, opens up doors in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And I always tell people, if you're in this industry and you truly love doing it, you kind of are a little bit brain broken, because why on earth would anyone wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go and do a 12-hour day that turns out being a 14-hour day in the sun, and then wake up and do it again the next day? Like, what person would actually want to do that? But there's those of us that do it, and then we look forward to doing it next week. And, if you have that passion for it, it definitely makes things a lot easier.
Yes. Well, let's switch gears a little bit here. When you're in the field as a production sound mixer, tell us what gear you're using. So what's in your audio bag?
So currently I am using the MixPre-10, just the version 1, not the version 2. In my kit, up to 4 lavalier mics, all Zaxcom, the QRX200s or 2000s, I forget the exact name, as the receivers, and then the body packs, which, record and transmit at the same time. Doing a lot of stuff with Disney's roller coaster, stuff like that. That was kind of a key thing that I had to spend the extra money to get. So I invested in that, and it works out. We can go into talking about patents, all that stuff another day, but you have to purchase what you need to purchase sometimes. My go-to microphone right now is the Sanken CS-3e. That's my favorite boom microphone. Whenever I'm doing kind of like talking head corporate interview stuff, I absolutely love the Sennheiser MKH-50. Beautiful sounding microphone for dialogue, and as long as you can get close enough, of course. And I'm a Ktek guy. I love Ktek bags, harnesses, little hip pack. That's all. Everything I get is boom bowl, also Ktek. I am used to using a lot of Sound Devices gear as well. I was, whenever I was doing a lot of stuff for Disney, using their gear, they all had the 633, so I'm very familiar with that, type of menu system. Haven't used the 833 or the 888, maybe about 3 years ago was the first time I used it and haven't used it a lot since, but it's very, very familiar, very, very similar to the 600 series. And then, of course, everyone knows how to use the Sennheiser G3s, G4s. That's kind of on every low-budget kit. So just very familiar with that and the Sony packs as well.
Okay. What lav mics do you prefer?
For everyday use, I would say the Sanken COSs. Those are just kind of the heavy hitter, super hefty wire, so you don't have to worry about something being snapped. But I own 4 of the DPA 4063s, I think they are. They sound amazing. It's if you just look at it the wrong way, though, they like to break, especially in the humidity. So I've definitely had to send those back to repair a couple times, but they sound beautiful.
Okay. And what do you like regarding timecode boxes?
So Tentacles has been the thing that just always works for me. Of course, I've used like the old school Denicky boxes, like the lock boxes in the past. But Tentacle is what I always use, and it just seems to just work. So I'm like, hey, if I don't have to think about it twice, there you go.
All right. And when you're hiding mics, what are some of your favorite expendables to use?
So I love I've actually switched over to the Rycott like softies that are meant for outdoor use, but they do a really good job with getting rid of that scratching. And then with the double-sided little like diamond-shaped stickies that go with that, and then just sandwiching the lav in between the softie and the sticky, and then sticking that either to the person's chest or to the clothing, just if we can, whatever we see less of course. Vampires are always a good go-to. If I get a really lucky easy job, of course, tie clip, but that I never get that lucky. I usually have to have a hard time with it. And then also RM11s always have at least 4 of those in my back pocket. They just fit almost every occasion.
All right, so here's a scenario. Someone reaches out to you and they need a sound mixer. What are some of the first questions that you start asking?
Definitely the one I've learned to always ask, number one, is always, where is this actually being shot? I've been burnt so many times. Oh, it's somewhere in Orlando. And then the day before, they're like, okay, here's an address in Tampa. And I'm like, hey, that's great. I'm okay working in Tampa. Please just tell me before 4 hours before I have to be there, though. So definitely location has to be number one. More practically, though, I need to know the type of talent or the number of talent we're dealing with. Of course, my kit is base 4, but can expand up to 6 pretty easily as long as I have the time to be able to, know that. Definitely number of cameras, how many cameras we're working with, just making sure one of my already 50 existing timecode cables works with it. Of course, it doesn't always, so you have to, go to quick shopping trip to Gotham Sound to get a new cable every single month. But definitely number of talent, number of cameras, and also just getting a general vibe of what the shoot is expecting. As you know, every single director, producer, team is a different, not challenge, but a different way of trying to move through the day. So, hey, is this a fly on the wall? We get what we get. We don't really have the luxury of, backing up, doing it over again. Your job is to get it as best as possible. Or is this more of a methodical, hey, this needs to be perfect the first time and we're okay spending an extra hour on it if we have to. So just understanding the vibe of what the shoot is expecting is always going to be a lot better knowing before you head into it.
Yes. And then every now and then we got to ask, is this paid or unpaid?
Yeah, I have luckily moved. It's taken some courage in some years. I've luckily moved past unless it's a very close friend, the volunteer-based work. It still comes up, especially if it's a passion project, especially around Central Florida. Independent films tend to be at the very least super micro budget, if not non-existent budget. But again, I love to at least do at least one narrative a year. And even if that means that I'm almost giving up my day, at least they're paying me lunch, at least they're paying my gas. I'm okay doing that. But yeah, pay is always going to be, hey, this is what I'm expecting to get, and I'm not trying to shortchange you. I promise you I'm worth it. Here's my references. Here's my resume to back that up. My hope is to give you the best product that I can possibly give you. And just making sure that that's established right at the beginning just solves a lot of headaches.
I have a couple close friends, and they're always asking for the friends and family discount. And I was like, oh, really? So, All right, here's another scenario. You have a gig, so how early do you like to arrive before your call time?
I would, in a perfect world, love to at least be there an hour before. One of the biggest stresses of my life is, for no reason at all, just showing up. We say it in the industry, on time is late, late is fired. I never want to be that person who's there even 2 minutes late. That's just like, I'm sitting there the entire car drive, a pit in my stomach, being like, how could I let this happen? How could I do this to myself? How could I do this to them? So even if I have to sit in a parking lot for 45 minutes, that's a lot less stressful than, like I said, the drive going up into there.
And you can sit in the car, you can check your social media, your email, whatever. I'm a big proponent of getting there early and being ready, because there are times where traffic backs up, there's an accident, something that you cannot control. I don't want to be that person that's saying, hey, hold up, I'll be there soon. And anyway, do you have a cart you build before you unload?
Most of the time, yes. Every location's different, especially a lot of the corporate shoots have been, hey, we rented an Airbnb in a house. So this is a very keep tidy property. It's everyone is maybe sitting in a corner for their stations. Of course, camera departments gets the entire garage, their camera department. But in those circumstances, I try to keep it as low profile as possible. But on a typical day, yeah, I use a Magliner Junior. Unless I'm on a studio, I don't like dealing with the traditional, like, taller sound cart. I'm just afraid of someone very innocently, but still doing it, of just bumping into it and it falling over. So I like the ruggedness of the Magliner to be able to just have the bigger surface area as well.
And I know there's no such thing as a typical shoot, a generic day, but walk us through coming to a gig and your step-by-step process for the day.
So if I am arriving early, which I always love to do, number one is just kind of making sure I'm looking at the production map that's usually given, making sure that I'm parking exactly where they need me to park, making sure that I'm looking out for maybe some security that might come up and say, hey, why are you the only person here at 4 o'clock in the morning? And it's me saying, hey, it's okay. I'm an hour early. Yes, but isn't that good? Don't you appreciate I'm here an hour early? And then, of course, once you start getting to, just say I have to call time at 5, so 4:30, then I start in my head thinking, oh my gosh, am I at the right location? Because wouldn't you think that other people should be here 30 minutes beforehand? And then usually 5 minutes later, someone shows up. So I'm like, ooh, I didn't mess that up. Getting on location, depending if we're moving into, just say, like a park, trying to get the information to see, hey, is this the time to unload? Do we have to do a security check? Do we have to do a canine check? Making sure that I'm not jumping the gun, because of course that can happen very easily. Now, just say we're at a very known location. We don't have to deal with any of that stuff. Loading up as soon as possible. Never want to be the person everyone is waiting on. Want to be ready to push as soon as possible. I always try to leave what I absolutely know we're going to use with me at all times, be that in my backpack, be that on the cart. And then I go through the checklist of, okay, if I know that these are the things I'm using, what are either the backups to those things or the things that are reasonably could be asked for the job, and then also keeping that with me. And then all the other unnecessary amount of gear I bring, because I always want to be super prepared, stays in the car. So whenever they came up and say, hey, guess what? We did actually need those 5 IFB, even though we promised you we wouldn't need it. I'd be like, it's okay. I have it in the car. I can go and grab it for you. Of course, surcharge, but hey, I'm going to at least be the hero there until they get the invoice. So then first thing I want to do is make sure I'm properly there and not in anyone else's way. We have, of course, our grip and our electric, who is going to be the people who need to go in there, move that furniture, get everything set up. So I don't want to be going in instead of my boom pole when, they still need to do all their work. So making sure I'm close enough to the set that I'm hearing all the conversations, but far enough away that I'm not jumping in front of anyone, stepping on anyone's toes. Number one, first thing I always do is do a frequency scan. Make sure that the environment is friendly. If it's not, luckily, like I said, I invested in those Zaxcom packs, which do the internal recording. So I do know that is an option for us. We don't have to, I don't have to be panicking about RF dropouts. I can at least have that backup. But RF is always my first number one step. Then worrying about setting up my mixer, getting my project set up, making sure and confirming with either our producer or DP, making sure that her frame rates are, matching up, making sure that I know who I'm dropping my files off with at the end of the day, then starting to look through the script, making sure I'm getting my tracks all labeled, prepping up my lavs, just making sure if kind of not super ready. Of course, I haven't at this point seen talent or seen their wardrobe or anything yet. So getting them prepped to the point that that next step can be done. My goal is always be the first person ready because, again, I can then be ready for any curveballs they throw at you, which is just always going to happen. That's not a dig at anyone. That's just how production works. You just always have to be ready for the unexpected. I try to stick away from any sort of heavy breakfasts. I know they usually have crafty on set, but I'm like, hey, no, I don't want to be bogged down. I just want to be ready to go. That's what lunch is for. I'll be able to take a break then. Now, of course, if I'm all prepped and ready to go, then I can think about that type of stuff. But like I said, I like to be the one ready, waiting on everyone else. And then finally approaching camera team once it looks like they're at least starting to get ready, just letting them know who I am, making sure they know that I do need to put something on the camera, making sure that they're not setting up a gimbal, or if they are, letting them know, hey, this is exactly what I'm putting on camera. So if you do need to recalibrate, rebalance, I just don't want to throw this to you before it's too late. And yeah, that's pretty much up until talent, then just waiting, and then hurry up and wait, and then ready to go.
Well, when did you decide you wanted to get into sound?
So way back when I was very young, about 13, 14, I always knew I wanted to do something entertainment related. At first, I thought it was going to be something with animation. My dream as a kid was always I want to work for Pixar. As I grew up, I realized, I don't really have a talent for drawing, and I'm sure you actually need some sort of baseline to be able to work with one of the best animation studios in the world. So I'm like, okay, I probably won't work for Pixar in that way, but I still want to do something with entertainment. So I was fortunate enough to be part of a church at the time that had a pretty big media team, had like recording services in their band, on a live mixer, 32 channel mixer. They had a brand new thing called iMac, and they had Pro Tools. It was all like, I've never even heard of these things in my life. So I started working with them and doing that from, like I said, about 14 until I was about 17. And then I had to go and actually think about working. So I couldn't volunteer there anymore. So always loved like the idea of audio and live performance and stuff. Decided through a couple different schools. I had Art Institute was one of my options, another college in LA, and then I had a friend who actually was an older person at the time, but actually was an animator once upon a time, and they talked about hearing about a school called Full Sail. So I went, did their tour. The tour did exactly what it was supposed to. It got a very excited 18-year-old to say, yes, I have to go here. So I signed up that very day, as you do. And actually went to Full Sail hoping to learn more about camera and things like that. Always knew that I had sound as another option, but I just wanted to explore with things I've never really explored with before. And I actually got into it a little bit, but as I was going on with school, I realized, hey, there's just say 50 people in my class, and 30 of those 50 people want to touch this camera. And then the other 10 people want to be a director, and then everyone else is fine being a G&E or art department or something like that. And there was literally not one single person who wanted to touch the sound machine. So I'm like, hey, if this is how it is in school, this is probably how it is outside of school as well. So there's probably a lot more limited number of people doing this per profession. So I kind of like, hey, I already like doing this. I have an interest in it. And if it's going to be the right decision in the long term, why not make that decision? So from that point forward, decided to go fully into audio, fell in love with it even more than I thought I would. Started going into every single final project I could because, again, no one in the school really wanted to touch audio. So I was the person doing like, I think the final count ended up being like 14 student films over the course of like 4 months because, again, no one else wanted to touch audio. Very, very fortunate right out of school to start buying my own gear, and then got my first gig I think about a month before I graduated. And I remember it was a person who was a realtor doing kind of like a customer appreciation like picnic or like an employee appreciation picnic. So it was me, someone else who was from Full Sail who had a DSLR camera, and we each got paid. And I had my, at the time, Zoom F8, and I got 2 Sennheiser G3s, and I think I had a 416 that I borrowed from the school, and I got paid, I believe, $150 for the day, and it was like a 12-hour day. And you know what? I was better off than a lot of people, because people were getting slower rates than that and becoming a PA for their first job. So I always say I was really lucky to be able to kind of jump right into boom operating and ENG and sound utility right off the bat. I kind of skipped a couple steps.
All right, cool. Well, what was the all-time favorite project you've ever worked on?
My funnest job ever was a job for SeaWorld. It was a pretty big crew. I think it was about 4 different teams. It was a main team with 2 cameras, and then it was 2 other teams. There was one that was fully B-roll, so they didn't have any sound on that team. I was kind of like the B team who was going around getting B-rolls, but there's a whole bunch of different trainers that they wanted to get interviews for. And then the friend of mine who was the actual sound mixer with the A team was then covering like the big interviews. So if there was like the backdrop of the whale, the orcas, like he was doing that stuff. I was going around to like, hey, this is the person who takes care of the sea turtles, or this is the person who takes care of the walrus. That's what we went and captured. Super fun. Met a whole bunch of passionate people who loved their job and loved talking about it and were very excited to be able to share their passion. The entire day, I just kept hearing murmurings of how terrible it was going for my friend and the other team because just nothing was working out. So I was like, this is just one of the luckiest opportunities I had. I'm here. I'm with a really cool camera operator that I got along with. I'm with a really cool 2-man team. It was a PA and a camera assistant. And we're just going around, walking around wherever you want. And we would walk up to a trainer and say, hey, we're with this media organization. Do you want to talk about the stingrays today? And they'd be like, I would love to tell you everything about stingrays today. And we would just interview them for 45 minutes and then go on to the next person. So yeah, that was one of the probably funnest jobs I ever done, was just walk around SeaWorld as a glorified guest and just talk to all the trainers about what they love to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like, doing these jobs, we get to learn some really unique things about things that maybe we had no idea about. It's educational, but fun too.
Yeah, especially whenever you have, of course, you always get the corporate stuff that's a little bit boring. But even if it's a little bit boring, like there's some people, even if it's only one interview out of the 4 different people who are so passionate about what they do and they're so excited to share it with other people. And just to be able to, like you said, learn from the people who want to share it the most, you just get the best experience, best exposure from a topic, like you said, you had no idea was even a thing before. So that's just the best way to be introduced to so many new things.
Awesome. All right. So you don't have to mention any names, but what's your worst on-set experience?
So it was one of my first independent films I ever done. It was the absolute worst experience ever, but it was also the job that taught me the most, which usually is how it goes. The entire project from start to finish was just a disaster. Just everything you could think could go wrong did go wrong. We all, as a crew, grew a lot. We all went through some trauma together, so still have some context from that job today just because of the craziness we had to go through. The worst, it was somewhere near the final, I'd like to say 8 days of that gig. We had a job or a specific day that was the catch-up day. We had a lot of stuff to do, and we only had 1 day at this location, but we were supposed to originally have 2 days at the location, but to save time, we squeezed it all into 1 day. So a lot of crazy stuff happening, a lot of moving parts. I was told to go to a specific location. I ended up there with about 4 other people in cars. We were then called. One of them was the camera team with like the main camera van. So they were also told to go to the wrong location. So they got called and said, hey, we told a whole bunch of people the wrong location, but we don't have the parking spaces available for you to now fit in this. Again, nowadays, hearing all this stuff, I would tell younger Alan, no, you don't put up with that. You have like the second most amount of equipment out of every other department. You deserve a parking space there. Like, you can't carry this across the street. But you live and learn. So I was told to get in the camera van with all my gear, and I have to be there in less than 30 minutes. So trying to throw everything I can into the gear just to make the day. I end up leaving my boom pole kind of leaning up against the van, forgot about it. The van backed up, the boom pole fell down, and then the front tire ran over the boom pole. Worst. Just, you know, in that moment in a movie where everything just goes slow-mo and you just hear like people like doing murmuring. Like, I literally went through that. Like, my whole world just disintegrated. I went through all the emotions. Again, this was about a year after I started. So I went through how could I let this happen? There's no way I'm professional enough to stay in this industry. How could I let like the most expensive piece of gear break? I need to stop. I need to blah, blah, blah. All that junk went through my head. And then I started realizing, yes, I let this happen. Was this 100% my fault? No, this was the circumstance I was put in. But these are the mistakes that I think of this now, not in the moment, but those are the mistakes that help you grow and help you learn not only not to make that specific mistake again, but never let those moments ever develop to be able to make that mistake again. I still have the boom pole. The pole actually survived. It was the microphone literally has an indent of where you can see the tire right over it. Again, it was a Sanken CS-3e, so it was $1,400 microphone, just ran over by a car. I still have that microphone to keep as a memory of, hey guys, listen, you can make some pretty terrible mistakes. Not every single mistake is salvageable, but you can make a mistake like this and still come out the other side and still take things away from it and still make the day, even if you have to go and use a Rode NG1 that's in the back of a case somewhere, like to make the day finish out, and then twist the arm of the production company who doesn't want to file any insurance claim because they're already behind schedule, so it would look bad on their bosses.
Yeah, we all have some crazy stories like that. Do you have a favorite genre that you like working on?
So I really do like dramas in general, watching and filming. Comedies are always going to be a good one. It's a little bit harder to make a good comedy, in my opinion. So you really have to have amazing writing, amazing directing, amazing talent to make a comedy work, where other genres can kind of be a little bit lax on. Just because you're missing a little bit of one element, other elements can pull it through. Where comedy, I think that if you don't have every element hitting it on cylinders, it's just going to kind of end up being not great. But if you do have that element, every single element, and you have a great crew working with it, it can be a lot of fun as long as everyone stays on task. Because again, comedies can also derail because everyone's having a good time and then we're, oh, let's do another take because it's so funny. And it's like, yeah, but we've already done 8 takes. So maybe we should move on to the next thing if we think we got it. But if you have a really good crew working on a really funny comedy with really good talent, it's a blast.
Okay, if you were to give some advice to someone just getting started in the sound department, what would you tell them?
Be willing to learn as much as possible, learn everyone's philosophy, learn everyone's method, and understand that there's not, especially if they're working in it a lot, like if they have the results, they're being hired, there's not a single thing that they're doing, I wouldn't say right or wrong, but learn everything you can and then apply it with other ways of doing it. And then you finally do have to morph it into your own identity. Like, you need to make yourself stand out, and that could just be your personality, that could be your work ethic, that could be showing up to set before anyone else. But understand that the people you are working for at the beginning are there for a reason, so learn as much as you can from them, but also I personally I can't, I'll say it this way, I can't see other people in this industry as competition. that's just not a thing I like to think about. Like, you have colleagues in this industry, especially if you're in a little bit of a smaller area, like there's not as many people around you. You never know when that person that you're talking to that, yes, is in all technicality competition, oh, they're taking a job from you. No, I can't think of it like that. You never know that when, hey, they have a job and they just can't do a single day, you know, they've done 4 days and there's a day that they just can't pick up. So you never know when they're going to recommend you, and you never know when you need to recommend them because an emergency came up and you need to fill that day, and because you can't let that client high and dry, and now you're throwing a job to someone else. So never ever feel like, oh, I need to be the person who sucks up all the work. There's plenty of work for everyone. Yes, some seasons are drier than others, but just don't let that kind of toxicity into your mentality. It would be my number one. And then don't feel proud enough to feel like there's a job you won't do. There's definitely going to be jobs that you aren't the most in love with, especially with certain genres. Like for me, it's reality. I'm just not the biggest fan of reality. But hey, if you need to pay the car payment, you need to make the car payment. That's just how it is in this industry. It's feast or famine. So do everything you can, learn from everyone you can, and just be very open and gracious with people. And I think a lot of the times, if you are someone who has a really good personality and people like working with, and you get along with as many people as you can, even if you're not a 10 out of 10 at your job, if you're an 8 out of 10, people are still going to want to prefer to work with you if you have that like easygoing personality.
Yeah, I'm all about, if I get offered a job and I can't do it, I want to be able to refer it to one of my, local colleagues. And so I do that a lot for them, and they do that for me. And so I appreciate that kind of thing. So I've had listeners reach out and ask me, hey, do you know anybody in Baltimore? Or hey, do you know anybody in New Orleans? And so I've been able to do that, and then I hear later, hey, thanks for the referral. Like I said, let's all be friends. Let's help each other out.
Yep. When we can. Like I said, there's a bunch of other stuff going on. We don't have to worry about it that hard.
Excellent. All right. I want to say thanks to Alan Harris for being on the podcast.
Of course. Thank you so much, Michael.
I'd like to say thanks to everyone for listening. If you have questions, send an email to locationsoundpodcast@gmail.com. The Location Sound Podcast is part of the Audio Podcast Alliance, featuring a hand-picked selection of the very best podcasts about sound. Be sure to hear the latest episodes from our friends in the community at audiopodcast.org. Until next time, remember, sound is half the picture.